Planes, trains, and automobiles. How many of you used at least two of these modes of transportation to get here? Okay, that's good. Anytime I say planes, trains, and automobiles, I'm reminded of this classic movie, right? How many of you use three of these modes of transportation to get here? Good. How many of you use more than three? All right, good. So we're going to stick to three. You know, it's interesting. We often go through these experiences, like we go from the plane to the train without thinking about how connected they are. We go from the plane to the car without thinking about the technology that actually drives the experience in all of these modes of transportation. There is a data point and a fact that there is a 90% chance that each of you in the room had your first experience with IoT on either a plane, in a train, or in an automobile. Do you believe that? Yeah, you don't have, this is not the interactive piece necessarily yet, but I'm just warming you up because I want you to answer some of these questions later on. There's a 90% chance that you had your first experience with IoT through one of these modes of transportation. I actually happen to fall into the 10% category. And my first experience with IoT was actually an interesting one. It was at the end of a long bike ride with my good friend, Mark Monday, who's here in the crowd. I went back after my bike ride and I uploaded my information from my Garmin into Map My Ride. I was presented immediately with a dashboard, information from my last 30 rides. It was phenomenal. I had never seen this information before, but it was my personal data on my personal cloud from this edge thing, this device that sent all of this information into the cloud. And it gave me things like my average heart rate, you know, the distance traveled over these 30 rides, the amount of energy I spent on each ride. What it then told me was how to be more efficient. Again, my personal information, my personal data, how to be more efficient on those rides, when I should pop that energy cube, exactly how I should attack that hill, how I could beat my friend Mark Monday going up the hill and then down the hill. It gave me all that information. It was enlightening. This was several years ago. This was my first experience with IoT. And it also was the first time that I realized that we're on the forefront of compute. We're on the forefront of cloud. It taught me a valuable lesson around what it means to innovate, like the possibilities to innovate within IoT. It gave me a sense for the different business models and things that support IoT. And those two things together, it gave me a tremendous sense of the growth, the revenue opportunity that exists for not only Microsoft, but all of us in the ecosystem. It was that day that I also likened it to life. You know, IoT is like life. Like once you see it, once you experience it, it truly is everywhere. Now, whenever I'm in an audience like this, like how do you bring this home, and what does everywhere mean? Well, I want to walk you through a couple of examples to show you exactly what everywhere means. Now, a few weeks ago, I was given a task by my family. They asked, my kids were home for spring break, and they asked me to pick up dinner on the way home. Well, when I got into my car, I realized that my tank was close to empty. There was no way I could make it to the store and then also make it home. And so I pull into a Shell gas station. Now, I unclick the pump and I put it in, and I lean back because I'm gonna be there for a while. Scott, I drive a big Ford F-150, so it's gonna take a while. I'm on empty. And I start looking around, and I am actually amazed. What I see at the gas station is this immersive digital experience. There's a digital sign there that as I'm leaning back and pumping the gas, that actually has a picture of a Ford F-150 on the digital sign. And I'm thinking, is this coincidence, or is something else going on? The digital sign swiped, and the next thing that was displayed was actually an advertisement for a bed cover for a truck. Now, it wasn't specific to the Ford F-150, but it was a bed cover, and the gas is pumping. I'm going, what the heck is going on? And because I am a self-professed geek, it quickly shifted from a question on how did this information get on the sign to how did the gas actually get to the pump, right? Have you ever think about that when you go to the gas station? Like, how does the gas get to the pump? Well, behind the gas station, there's this 24/7 logistics process that pumps and manages petroleum from refineries, 500, 1,000 feet deep, and sends it through a process, through pipes and through holding tanks. And there are devices in the middle of this that actually manage the flow of your gasoline and petroleum coming through. There's switches and sensors, and people actually manage that information, like how, from the refinery all the way through to the actual pump. It was actually fascinating, and I started thinking about the partners that we have in IoT that are driving this type of capability, like the partners that are bringing this experience to me. And Emerson came to mind immediately. Emerson is a great example of a partner that took these three things that I talked about just a minute ago, this innovation. They're like, hey, listen, we've got this history in process automation. We know how to actually get liquid and petroleum from the refinery to the pump. We've built these devices, these switches, and this core capability for years. How do we actually evolve that? How do we cloud enable our hardware, establish machine to machine? And then how do we build a platform, which is what they did, PlantWeb, this digital ecosystem that manages not only their hardware, but software and displays information for companies like Shell to tell them where they may have, predictive faults in the line so that they can eliminate waste through the actual supply chain. It's just a great example as well. Emerson thought about, like, how do we change our resource skill mix, because we're not only and no longer just a hardware provider, we actually now have a platform in PlantWeb that we have to manage. And so the skill sets that we need for our business have to change. We need cloud developers. We need that capability. In doing that, they also shifted to higher margin services, low margin hardware, to now all of a sudden building and extending their business on cloud and offering opportunities to create additional margin. Now, by the way, I'm still at the gas station. All these thoughts are going through my head and over like a 5-minute span. And so the pump clicks, it tells me that it's full. It's like $128 later. I'm like, all right, maybe I still have a few dollars left to go and buy dinner. And so I move on to the next experience. I get to the grocery store, and now I'm IoT aware, and I see it. I see it immediately when I walk in. Do you see it? Not just the most impressive fruit and vegetable display you've ever seen in your life. Like, this slide is awesome. That's not what I'm focused on. Do you see it? There it is, right there, right? There's a camera perched high in the rafters. Now, is this a person behind a glass wall doing merchandise control? It's like that beautiful squash. He's like, oh, there's a squash burglar. Let's get him. It's like, no, that's not what's happening at all. This camera is actually generating something that we call cognitive services or cognitive analytics. When I walk into the store, it's taking my information and processing it right there on the device. Demographic information. It's taking sentiment. Am I in a good mood or not? It's taking hair color. I don't know. That was a challenge because I don't have any. So, but for some of you going in, it's mapping hair color, and it's taking that information, processing it on the local device, sending it to blob storage, because we don't want those personal identifiers, but we do want the information on demographic, on sentiment. And what this does is it actually helps the store determine loyalty programs, where and how they place the vegetables. Is it this week's time for the olive oil to be here? Or should we put beer there this week? Or whatever the store has to manage, these cognitive services and cognitive analytics give the ability of the store to make that decision. And this brings me to partners like Jenna Tech. Unbelievable partner. They had an install base of thousands of analog cameras in stores, right? They moved this to a digital scenario. They created a scenario where every single one of these cameras were not just sending storage to a server, data and information to a server in the back of the room, but they were sending this information digitally and managing cognitive services. They built their own platform, Retail Sense. right? So you're catching a few themes, right? There's a device involved in IoT. There's a cloud solution and cloud development that's involved in IoT. They built Retail Sense to be their own platform as well as to be a software as a service so it can plug into other providers' platforms. They said, we want heavy compute on the edge. We want to establish machine learning. We want to establish cognitive services on the edge. It changed the way that they looked at their sales cycle as well as their pricing strategy. And it also created an opportunity to extend margins as well as expand into new markets. Now, they had over 15,000 of these in Starbucks stores. Now, the beauty of this is you think of something like cognitive services and cloud, and every time someone walks in and out of the store, it's generating money, right? Now, Nimesh, don't go and send your team into grocery stores and go, hey, boom, money, hey. It doesn't quite work like that. But the whole point is there is a revenue opportunity for every single one of these partners who think about cognitive services. Just the simple act of walking into the store is kicking off a consumption scenario that all of us need to think about as an ecosystem. Now, companies like Emerson, companies like Jenna Tech, companies like Microsoft, like Ingram, like many of you in the audience, cloud has not only disrupted our business, but as Nimesh said, this is an extinction event, right? It's not a scenario of if it's going to happen. It's, has it happened already? And one would say yes. At Microsoft, we thought long and hard about this opportunity that we call IoT, right? From my personal experience and really learning and understanding what it was all about to building business models, we had to think long and hard about whether or not we were appropriately ready for this opportunity. And it was a mindset shift for us in our company. We asked the simple question first is like, hey, is this a peer fixed mindset, or is this actually a bridge that's getting us to the other side of the lake? Many, many hours spent in dark rooms in Redmond, Washington in February with rain pelting the windows, half full cans of Coke Zero. We started debating and asking all these questions. Like, we dug in. Perhaps many of you have been there and you can relate to, but these are some of the questions that we asked around IoT and whether or not we were ready for the opportunity. I remember in these meetings, there were a series of many of them where we just sat back and we had like our EVP of sales, Judson Althoff, saying, hey, are we enabling repeatable cloud solutions? Repeatable is an important thing in IoT, especially for all of you if you think about your partnering model. It's not the bespoke one-off. In IoT, the accelerator is building this repeatable solution, this repeatable scenario that gives you an opportunity to leverage 80-90% of what you've built already for the next customer opportunity that comes in. So we were asking ourselves, hey, if we really push ourselves into IoT, how do we do this thing called repeatable? Are we activating our ecosystem from device to cloud? Are we building the capability in the ecosystem that allows us to have these compute devices on the edge, like that Jenna Tech camera or that Emerson device, that then connect seamlessly back to cloud platforms? We had to really think through those questions. And then, can we leverage a subscription model? Can we leverage a scenario that builds on the experience of subscription but leads us to something called consumption, which becomes the currency for all of us in these cloud models? So we spent a lot of time in our sales disciplines asking these questions. Scott Guthrie, who runs engineering for us, he was asking a different set of questions as we were shifting and thinking about, challenging ourselves on mindset. He was asking, do we need architects? This is that skill set, that resource shift. What's the capability that we need to go out and build these solutions? If we have them, what's their connection and tie back to our broader set of engineering teams and capability? Very, very important as we think about this shift. How are we supporting this from a structural standpoint? And do we have the talent and capability within our structures that can scale? Absolutely critical question as it related to mindset and capturing the IoT opportunity. Gabriella Schuster, who was here earlier this week and leads our partner business, she had a set of questions that she asked in mindset. right? As we were making this shift and transition. Are the specialists close to partners? This isn't a relationship statement. We hope that's true. This is more of a proximity statement. Do we have the right people in the right regions with the right skill sets that are helping all of you build this great technology, build these device-to-cloud solutions? Are we enabling P2P? The reality in IoT is that it takes more than 20 partners to build an IoT solution from end to end. From the time that a device is manufactured all the way through to a customer consuming our cloud capability, 20 to 25 partners engage. In our mindset conversation and discussion, we had to think about, are we enabling this, right? Are there programs, rules of engagement that are in the way of enabling seamless P2P? And that's when we started thinking about the relationship between a Microsoft and a company like Ingram. Are we supporting Ingram's P2P goals? How are they going to help us accelerate this notion of IoT? And then, can we scale collectively through our sales force and capability? Do we have the right resource and capability at Ingram? Do we have the right resource and capability at Microsoft to really approach this from a partnership standpoint? So this was several years ago. Again, really, we dug in, and we had to, because this IoT opportunity is massive. We had to shift our mindset. Our mindset shift led us to this worldview. And this is awesome. We spent all those hours in those dark rooms and around large conference tables to get to a point of a worldview. And the worldview becomes important, right? Our worldview is intelligent edge and intelligent cloud. And really what this means is that we have billions of these connected multi-sense devices on the edge. It's no longer just keyboard or touch, but it's touch, it's gesture, it's voice. These are heavy compute devices on the edge that are capable of processing data and information that seamlessly integrate back into an intelligent cloud. When you have those two things working together, more data and more information is created. This is this notion of AI, right? You have the ability to process data and information on the edge, match with this integration and this powerful cloud, and the combination of those two things allows you to build out and expand your capability. It leads to also things like quantum. And Nimesh said that I'm not allowed to go into too much detail on quantum. I would love to just sit here, pull up a couch and a cigar and a glass of whiskey and just wax on quantum all day. But that's for another time, perhaps later this evening, if anyone's interested, as a matter of fact. But this compute power at the edge is also about silicon and software, as it is the cloud. And I'll talk more about that in just a second. So if you're tracking this, it's like mindset that led to worldview. And then we said, great, we've got some amazing talk track around our investment, our IoT push in our worldview. Like, what happens next? And so we put an investment out, and this is now public, $5 billion investment in IoT. You know, what does that mean, and how does it relate to every single person in this room? It starts with R&D. You know, Microsoft, as much as being a great software company, as much as being a great marketing company with a lot of brands, it's also an R&D company. In fact, it's probably the thing that we are most of all. R&D, things like a solution called FarmBeats that sits within our research group and division that is all about bringing farming to these remote communities. You know, it starts with sensors in the ground, and then there's drones that have flight patterns that are based on algorithms that the research team builds to determine and track, you know, not only weather patterns, but at that point, flight patterns that help farmers decide and determine where to plant things. Those are things coming out of our R&D organization that have implications on how we do business, no longer 5 or 6 years out, but potentially 2 years out. And so this R&D investment that we made as part of our broader $5 billion IoT investment, absolutely critical. Resource. You know, if I think back 3 or 4 years ago, we had maybe 100 100 people focused on IoT. We have over 1,000 people that are directly focused from an engineering as well as sales. And then we have even more people in our field that care about selling right next to you, selling these IoT solutions with your line of business credibility into our joint customers. Partner enablement. How are we enabling Ingram? How are we enabling each of you in the audience to actually maximize the opportunity? And then there's product investment. So of this $5 billion, we've already invested $1.5 billion, and we'll continue to invest the rest over the next several years across these 4 things. But from a product standpoint, it's also hard to anchor on, hey, what exactly is IoT without actually having a product behind it. Windows IoT and Azure IoT really make up our product portfolio for Microsoft. With Windows, we've been in this embedded device business and embedded operating system business for more than 25 years. We bring today a set of capability that is Windows IoT Enterprise and Windows IoT Core that allows us to basically progress this intelligent edge story. It's trusted, it's connected, it's all the things that we've been for many, many years in this embedded space. It's also Azure. Azure being the most hyperscale cloud platform with more than 90% of our Fortune 500 companies deploying Azure. It's not just infrastructure, it's platform as a service, and that's our beginning from a cloud perspective. It's platform as a service and enabling, again, partners like Ingram, partners like yourselves to build not only your platform as a service capability, but your software as a service extensions to those platforms. It's absolutely about extending the value proposition of artificial intelligence and advanced analytics and provisioning at scale. When I think about where we are with Azure today, it's absolutely phenomenal. We released our earnings last week, and we are growing over 93% year over year in Azure. When I say we, I don't mean Microsoft. When I say we, I mean our entire partner ecosystem. The combination of Windows and Azure and your work in cloud as you move forward is absolutely critical to our long-term success. The other thing we talked about and announced last week was Azure Sphere. That's super hard to say, by the way. Like, can you say that 5 times in a row? I don't know where you end up on the 5th time. I tried it once, and I can't repeat what came out at the 5th mention. But Azure Sphere, an amazing technology for Microsoft and for the company. How many of you are familiar with microcontrollers? Good, I expected like no hands. I'm so happy that 2 of you are familiar with microcontrollers. The fact is that each and every one of us have roughly 25 to 50 microcontrollers in our homes. Would you believe me if I told you that? Just because I'm standing here on stage doesn't mean I have to be a credible source of information, by the way. So no offense, but anything. So if you think about a computer and a CPU, powers heavy compute devices, GPUs power heavy compute devices. Microcontrollers basically process every other electronic thing in the world. Billions of these devices. So think about your old clock radio, think about that clock on your microwave, think about your child's toy that's connected to the internet. Like, microcontrollers are everywhere. There are billions of these things, billions and billions of these things. Now, in a connected world, in a world of IoT, the edge becomes a potential threat from a security standpoint. It becomes a potential path and entry point into your private data, your information, your company's private data and information, your customers' private data and information. And so what Microsoft just announced yesterday is our push into basically building secure silicon. Secured MCUs with a secured operating system that's based on the history and tradition of Windows and all the great compute, but it's also a Linux distribution. And when we announced this, there was a lot of press around, our Azure Sphere solution and the fact that we're opening up an open source scenario and building this Linux distribution. It's also a secure cloud service. Again, it takes the best of Windows IoT and Azure IoT, so you don't have to worry about someone hacking into your stove and turning on the gas and it blowing up, or pulling Barbie and she says, you could be having a better day today. It's like, no, Barbie, don't say that. Like, only positive things. Like, your kids' toys, your toasters, your appliances are more secure as a result of Azure Sphere. And we're super, super proud of where this technology will take us from an ecosystem standpoint. Now, why would you invest in IoT? There are so many important reasons. Beyond this being a $1.3 trillion opportunity with billions of connected devices. By the way, whenever I see billions of devices, again, I try to relate to things. My head spins when I get into billions of things because I've never had a billion of anything, right? Maybe I aspire to someday, but I've never had a billion of anything. So I was thinking, like, last week, I did a web search, a Bing search on, relevant things in billions. Now, I know when I say this, I'm not going to look anyone in the eye, I'm not going to judge you, but I know some of you will be able to relate to this. So the billion thing hit AB Serve, Anheuser-Busch, 12 billion bottles of beer per year. Some of you can relate to that, right? Based on that reception last night, I would say yes, by the way. The point in the billion and the trillion is you've got to find a reason to connect to this opportunity that is IoT. $1.3 trillion. Billions of devices. In the time that we are sitting here today, let's call it 8 hours, there will be more than 8 million connected devices that come online. Think about that as the opportunity and the cloud solutions that sit on top of that and that serve it. When we go even further, we think about 94% of the value being in the ecosystem. This is all of you in the room, right? There's platform capability, but all of you in the room help build this trillions of dollars of opportunity that sits in IoT, from the connectivity to the hardware to the software capability that you build in your cloud solutions and services. This is absolutely critical for each of us to understand as we think about where the opportunity lies within IoT. Now, planes, trains, and automobiles. Unbelievable movie. Like, my favorite quote in the movie that I couldn't really relate to anything that was partnerish was, "Those aren't pillows." You guys remember? But I found this one, and it was Steve Martin's character, Neil Page, was sitting across from Dale Griffith, who was John Candy's character. And for those of you who don't know the story, it is truly a classic where, these two guys who don't know each other, aren't connected, are trying to get from New York to Chicago, and they find themselves with canceled and delayed planes and flights and dusty planes, trains, and automobiles. And two of the oddest characters that could ever be matched with each other. And Neil Page, Steve Martin's character, leans over to Dale Griffith, John Candy's, and he says, I've been thinking about this. When we put our heads together, we really have gotten nowhere. I really think we get to where we are going faster if we were alone. It was a classic point in the movie, and it was a separation point. So I share that, and I relate it to say, no! In this world of IoT, it's all about partnering. Like, imagine if Neal and Dale had worked together, it would have been like a 5-minute movie, the most boring thing ever, but they maybe would have transformed the transportation industry for holiday travel, right? That's the opportunity in this partnership. It's like, partnership is key to accelerating IoT. It's key to unlocking the infinite possibility that exists for all of us in this space of IoT. And this brings me to, like, the true definition of partnership. There are bullets on the slide that I'm going to talk through in just a second, but I had this true moment of partnership. Nimesh, I'm not sure if you're in backstage or if you're in the front, but Nimesh and I were talking this morning, and he says, Rodney, Ingram is all in, and then he showed me this. Can the camera? He showed me his Microsoft socks. And I'm like, if I had an Ingram t-shirt right now, man, I would rip it off and just show everybody. Like, I would just like show everyone how all in we are.
How about a tattoo?
I could get a tattoo, yeah.
We got an artist in the back room, yeah? I'm sure my CEO would be happy to pay for that tattoo.
But stay with me for just a second, because this is the true definition of partnership, right? And what we want to get you focused on is this notion of innovating, right? You know, how do we engage together in the resource that our teams and our companies provide? Our focus is on supporting you in this journey from edge to cloud, but it's also things like leveraging Ingram's capability, you know, from CSP to their cloud capability. It's about thinking of your as-a-service models, be it device as a service, be it petroleum and supply chain as a service, and it's about really anchoring in and through this partnership, allowing us to help you build that and extend that. At the end, there's a profitability opportunity for you as well, and we really want you to accelerate your solutions and your time to market. So together I say, IoT is a massive opportunity, cloud is a massive opportunity. Once you see it, once you experience it, it truly is everywhere. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great day.